Welcome to my first video on astrobiology. The first question that we're going to be asking is, where are all the aliens? Our galaxy, the Milky Way, is over 100,000 light years across. To put that in the unit favoured by any science documentary filmmaker, that's a whole lot of football pitches. It has at least 100 billion stars, and some estimates put that quadruple that up to 400 billion. So the range in estimates of planets ranges from just 50 billion to trillions and trillions. So why aren't we just one of the many advanced civilizations in some galactic organisation, like the plot of many science fiction films? First of all, why don't we have a definitive answer for the number of stars and planets in our galaxy? Because this could make a lot of difference when estimating our chances of finding life 2.0. There are two main reasons. Reason 1. At the centre of our galaxy is a hot, dense core, and this creates a shadow region on the other side, which means we just physically can't see these stars to be able to count them. Reason number 2. There are so many stars in our galaxy that even if you counted one every second, it would still take you over 3,000 years to count them all. And this isn't even factoring in the time needed to analyse each of these stars for planets. So if it isn't possible to count every single star and planet, then there must be at least some way we can arrive at an estimate. One idea is to use the mass of the galaxy. This we can figure out by measuring how fast stars rotate around its centre versus how far they're from its centre. And then once we account for the insane amount of dark matter there is, we can divide the mass of the galaxy by the mass of an average star and figure out the number of stars, right? Looking at our local bubble of the Milky Way, it appears that red dwarfs are the most common type of star, as out of the 20 closest stars to the Sun, 13 of them are red dwarfs. Now, it could just be that our area of the Milky Way is a hotspot for these low-mass, long-lived stars. And we do know that the type of star that's most common in an area does change depending on where it is in the galaxy. For example, in the centre, the most common type of star seems to be like blue giants or red giants. But it does make sense that it would be red dwarfs, as these live the longest. So definitely in the future, it would be that red dwarfs would probably be the most common type of star. And we know this when we look at other galaxies at different ages. The older stars tend to have more red dwarfs, and the newer stars tend to have more high mass stars. Editing Jade here, that was meant to say older galaxies tend to have more red dwarfs and newer galaxies tend to have more high mass stars. Being the longest lived type of star, you'd think this system would be perfect for life to evolve in. It's long-lived, so there's enough time for the planets to form and create stable orbits, and for life to evolve before the star dies. But red dwarfs are very active. They release huge amounts of radiation, which could hinder or wipe out any life. In addition, they're also incredibly variable in terms of luminosity. Sunspots decrease the amount of light they give out by 40%, and flares can double their brightness in a very short amount of time. However, there is some hope. If a planet had a very strong magnetic field or a very thick atmosphere and deep ocean, it's possible that life could proliferate. But there are some other problems, such as how small these planetary systems tend to be. Red dwarfs are a lot cooler than stars like our Sun, which means the habitable zone, where water can exist as a liquid on a planet's surface, is really close to the star within the orbit of Mercury is on in our system. Luckily, the planets that we have found going around red dwarfs do seem to form around this region, particularly the Earth-sized planets. Well, it sounds great, except that the proximity to the star means that they are tidally locked. The same face always faces the star as it goes around, similar to how the moon is tidally locked to Earth, so we only see one face of the moon. Take TRAPPIST-1 for example. The system that hit the headlines due to its 7 rocky Earth-sized planets, 3 of which orbit within the habitable zone. TRAPPIST-1a, the star, is an ultra-cool red dwarf, which is only slightly larger than Jupiter, although it has a lot more mass. Its planets orbit at a distance that's within the equivalent of the distance of Mercury to our Sun, which means unfortunately that they're probably all tidally locked. On the plus side, the star has relatively few flares compared to other red dwarfs. The TRAPPIST-1 system was found using a combination of space and Earth-based telescopes, and it's one of the many that have been found recently. In fact, there are over 4,000 exoplanets. These are planets that have been discovered outside of our solar system, and there are around 2,000 that are unconfirmed. Obviously, not all of these are going to be habitable, and as of yet, we only know of life existing in one place, our Earth, which is why we have to protect it. So it appears that the conditions have to be just right for life to evolve. One of these conditions is being in the habitable zone. According to Wikipedia, out of the 4,000 exoplanets, there are only 17 that are kind of rocky terrestrial planets that exist in the middle of their habitable zone. There are around 30 more that are out towards the edges, but this is still quite low. And even if a planet is in the habitable zone, it doesn't guarantee the existence of ET. It just increases the likelihood. There are so many variables that have to be just right in order for life to evolve. Our part of the Milky Way, midway between the centre of the galaxy and the edge, is fairly quiet. In the Orion Arm, we're 1,000 light years from our nearest black hole, 500 light years from our nearest neutron star, and even the most powerful, possibly the most dangerous thing in the universe, a supernova, we are well away from the 50 to 100 light year danger zone from any possible star that could go supernova realistically. And this is very useful because it has meant that we haven't been subjected to intense radiation from outside of our solar system. And this is because we are in what's called the Galactic Habitable Zone, or the GHZ. This isn't fixed, and its borders and will fluctuate over time as the galaxy grows, and the conditions and borders of it have also changed over its short history of being discovered, as scientists understand more about the galaxy and how the universe works, and which has changed what we define as the Galactic Habitable Zone. Currently, it's estimated that only 0.3 to 1.2% of stars in our galaxy could support complex life. This is quite a small amount of stars, but also a small percent of a lot is still a lot. This figure comes from a 2011 paper which took into account past studies, the probability of a catastrophic event like a supernova or a black hole merger, the distance to the galactic centre, and height above the galactic plane. And because these factors all play a role in the habitability of an area. Returning to the smaller scale of individual planetary systems, there are even more hurdles that life must face, even after the chaotic beginnings of a solar system. Here are a few of the factors and variables that we think life needs in order to survive. 1. Liquid water. Liquid water is intrinsically linked to habitability, although its importance is contested. Here on Earth, our cells wouldn't function without water. No cell would function without water. It's the solvent that all the chemical reactions in your body take place in. And it is possible that life on another planet could have evolved with a different solvent that has similar properties to water, but it is quite unlikely. However, finding liquid water isn't as simple as just finding the right surface temperature, as even in our outer moons we have discovered liquid water. Usually this is due to having a high salt content or due to heating inside the planet due to tidal forces. 2. An energy source. Our food chains rely on autotrophs, which are the things that make food for themselves, like plants and other photosynthesizers, or chemotrophs, which use the chemical reactions in their environment. We find this sort of organism at the bottom of oceans. And without those type of organism, complex life just wouldn't have been able to evolve, as our food chains rely on them. They are the basis of all life on Earth, really. So we need an energy source. Even just to keep our planet warm enough, we need an energy source. The sun, for example, is what on Earth is our main energy source. Down in the deep ocean, so hydrothermal vents act as this. 3. A large planet. It's thought that the gravitational influence of Jupiter was key to the development of life on Earth. For example, it probably caused the realignment of planets that ultimately created the Moon. And for life, the Moon is super important, because not only does it create the tides that probably gave life on Earth the energy to get started, it also stops its axis from tilting too much, which wouldn't be good as it would mess up the seasons. Jupiter's gravity also stops asteroids from hitting the Earth, as it steers them off their course, or even captures them as moons. Number 5. Essential chemicals. As life probably started off as contained chemical reactions, elements like carbon, nitrogen, hydrogen, oxygen, and the compounds that they form are really important that they exist, and especially when they're in compounds. Number 6. Plate tectonics. Although these may have caused mass extinctions in the past, they are vital for not only renewal of our surface but also our atmosphere. So it stops carbon building up, and also keeps carbon in the atmosphere, so basically just keeps it balanced so we don't go too cold or too hot. Although at the moment our human activities are interfering with that, which isn't good. And finally, number 7. The planet needs an atmosphere and a magnetic field, which both work together to protect us from radiation from space, whether that's directly from our sun, so preventing too much UV from getting through, or from outer space, out of the solar system, from cosmic rays and things, which when we go up into space, it can pose a danger. Of course, there are cases where an organism can survive without water or an atmosphere, such as the resilient tardigrades, which can actually survive the vacuum of space. But they probably evolved from less resilient organisms, which means that life does need good conditions, at least to start off with, and from there, more resilient things can evolve. So, although these tardigrades may look pretty alien, they evolved here on Earth. Even though a lot of this may make it seem that it's going to be impossible for us to find life elsewhere, but I think we should still have hope, because imagine if we do find life elsewhere, even if it is traces of life on Mars perhaps, or bacterial life under Enceladus. It would be amazing to show that we aren't alone and that life can exist elsewhere. But if we don't find life, I think that's actually makes it even more amazing that we're here at all, and it shows how important it is that we need to care for our Earth and protect all those species that live on it, because we're limited edition. So stay curious, guys, and thanks for watching. Hope you learned something.